Hey, cruel wife. How many times do I have to tell you? The fork. There's no fork. Are you telling me to eat lunch with my hands? What a ridiculous, cruel wife. After our child was born, my husband started calling me a cruel wife occasionally. Why did I marry this man? I could hardly remember. Before we got married, I thought I liked him because he was kind and considerate. It was often said that women would change after getting married and having children. But I would ask this. What about men who don't change at all even after having kids? Isn't that somehow strange? Fed up with my mounting irritation, I shouted back at my husband on the phone. Shut up! If there's no fork, then eat with your hands. Even a baby can eat with their hands. Why can't you? My name is Carol, a 36-year-old office worker. By the way, I am currently on parental leave. Though in a different department, my husband Kent was a colleague at the same company. Kent, a responsible and respected manager, was our team leader. After dating for 3 years, we got married. We were both busy with work, but we spent our days off together and had a reasonably happy life. However, I began to have certain troubles as I got older. When will you guys let me see my grandchild? These were the words of Lewis, who is Kent's dad, as my father-in-law. Every time he looked at me and said this, I get sick to my stomach. I don't like Lewis, or rather I hate him. He's arrogant and acts so pompous. Lewis was a department head in a fairly large company. He may be a man in positions of authority, but I always think that it just at work and doesn't apply at home. I often saw him scolding mother-in-law Deanna. When I told Kent, he said, "My parents have always been like that. They haven't divorced, so it must be working out, right?" He talked about it as if it was none of his business, which made me wonder if this was really okay. We got married when I was 28, but we didn't have children for a while. About 2 years into our marriage, we started to think it might be difficult to conceive naturally, so we went to the hospital together. The test results revealed there was something wrong with Kent. What? You mean I'm the cause? Really? Kent couldn't believe what the doctor said. Even after getting a second opinion at 2 other hospitals, the results were the same. All I could do was to try to cheer up the disheartened Kent, saying, "The doctor said there's still a chance. I'll do my best too." Looking back, maybe Kent didn't even like these words from me. After that, we started treatment, which was quite tough. Not only was it physically tough, but it was also mentally taxing. Every time I passed a pregnant woman with a big belly at the OBGYN, I kept thinking, why can't I have a baby? Every time I saw Lewis during this time, he asked repeatedly, "Hasn't my grandchild been born yet?" Deanna was always kind to me, encouraging me not to worry. Dad is such a problem. I've explained to him that I'm the cause, but... Ken said in disgust. The treatment was hard, but back then, I hadn't even considered divorcing Kent. Then, when I was 35, I finally conceived our long-awaited baby. Even Lewis was pleased, saying, "Really?" I was starting to give up hope, but now I'll finally be a granddad. His words were excessive, but he seemed happy. Deanna also told me to take care of myself. What surprised us even more was that I was expecting twins. There was some anxiety about suddenly becoming a mother of 2, but Kent said, "Let me know anything I can do, I'll do anything." As might be expected of twins, by the time I passed the 6-month mark, my belly was as big as if I was at full term. By then, we knew both were boys. But there was anxiety as well as joy. This one is growing well, but the other hasn't grown much since last time. The doctor sometimes told me at checkups. I prepared myself for a smaller birth and prayed for their safe growth every day. Being pregnant with twins, I was able to start my maternity leave early. Kent had been promoted to manager around that time, perhaps in recognition of his hard work. But with his new responsibilities, he started coming home later and using work as an excuse. "Hey, can't you come home a bit earlier? It's getting hard to move around with my big belly." I said. His response was, "What can I do? It's work. I'll do my best once they're born." Thankfully, Deanna, who lives nearby, often came to check on me. I always thought Deanna was a quiet person, but she talked a lot when it was just the two of us. "How are you feeling, Carol? I made this because you said it was delicious before. Eat up. And I bought some daily necessities for you. Deanna, you're really a godsend." Thanks to Deanna, I could lead a calm life during my pregnancy. I'm truly grateful even now. Later, I gave birth to fraternal twin boys via C-section. My eldest son, Rui, was 5 pounds, and my second son, Ray, was 4.5 pounds. Kent and I had already decided on their names together. I was discharged from the hospital after about a week, but the boys couldn't come home due to their low weight. On the day of my discharge, Kent came to pick me up. I was depressed, but he said, "Think of it as a chance to rest for a while. Let's be positive." Frustrated by Kent's off-the-mark comment, my irritation peaked when I got home. "What is this?" The house was a mess, the table cluttered with stuff, and the sink overflowed with dishes. Even Kent realized it was bad and said, "I was going to clean up, but I've been busy with work, and on my days off, I'm too tired and sleepy in, and I thought, you're coming back today anyway." Realizing he expected me to clean up made me more sad than angry. "Kent, didn't you say you'd step up once the kids were born?" "Of course, I'll help with anything I can. But the kids are still in the hospital, so I thought it's okay to start helping once they're back," he said with a careless laugh. I just told him to look up how to care for someone postpartum and locked myself in the bedroom. A few minutes later, he quietly opened the door. "Sorry, Carol. I looked up how to care for someone after giving birth. You're right, I shouldn't make you strain yourself. Rest easy today. Starting tomorrow, you'll just do as much as you can." With a smug face, he left the room. What does he mean by starting tomorrow, you'll just do as much as you can? It seemed Kent still didn't understand the meaning of rest. Perhaps I could have relied on my parents, but my brother and his wife lived there, and their eldest child was a student preparing for exams then. When I told about my pregnancy, that night my sister-in-law messaged, "Are you planning to come to our parents' home after giving birth? Please keep it short if possible, since our eldest son is studying for exams." I might have said the same if I were in her shoes. My mom was supposed to help me after my discharge, but she fractured her leg falling down the stairs the day before I was discharged. Considering Kent's behavior today, he probably won't be of much help. But the next day, my savior appeared. "Congratulations on your discharge, Carol. When Kent told me you needed help, I wondered what happened. Rely on me for anything," she said. To me, Deanna seemed like a goddess. Since I needed to breastfeed, Deanna drove me to the hospital every day. Once I asked Kent to deliver pumped breast milk to the hospital because of feeling unwell, he said, "Me? Impossible, I'll be late for work. I'll tell Mom," and left for work quickly. Kent always left inconvenient tasks to others. Kent will surely do more once childcare starts, and I need to try harder too. At that time, I still had the energy to think that way. A month after giving birth, my son's discharge was arranged. I was overjoyed at the thought of finally living together. On the day we brought the boys home, Louis visited and said, "This one is quite small, is he okay? Compared to him, this one looks healthy." He ignored quiet and smaller Ray, only doting on Rui. "What's with this old man? Enough already." I prayed the boys wouldn't get attached to Louis. Taking care of twins was far beyond my imagination. Feeding was doubled and they rarely slept at the same time. One of them was always awake. When both cried at the same time, I almost panicked. Deanna came almost every day, and my mom, whose leg was getting better, also visited regularly. Without these two mothers, I might have collapsed. Deanna and Mom seemed to get along well. We'll take care of Rui and Ray, so you should sleep while you can. They insisted, pushing me into the bedroom. I managed during the day, but the problem was at night. Kent, who said he'd do his best once the kids were born, hadn't changed. He still came home late, and by the time he arrived, I had finished bathing the babies. The most he did was admire the twins' cute sleeping faces. They're so cute. He often made them wake up by touching their cheeks. When they woke up and cried, the other would join in. Hey! They just fell asleep after so much effort. Don't mess it up. I snapped. You get angry like that again. Carol, you've been too irritable since having the babies. Remember, they can see you. He joked. Huh. It's your fault. I became upset as Kent complained and quickly headed for a shower. Kent ate the meals I made whenever he wanted to eat, and took a bath I prepare whenever he wanted to take. And he slept and woke up at his own convenience. Even when the kids cry, he never seems to hear them and remains asleep. It's the same with diaper changing. He does change them if I ask, albeit awkwardly. However, when it's poop, he stubbornly refuses, exclaiming, "Whoa! Carol, come here." Rui pooped, so change his diaper quickly. What does he mean by doing his best? Is this it? That can't be true, right? I felt like I wasn't co-parenting with Kent. I would have collapsed if it weren't for Mom and Deanna. When I was pregnant with the twins, I begged Kent many times to take paternity leave. I asked, but it's difficult. It's a pity, but I'll do my best when I get home from work, he said. And this was the result. Furthermore, Kent told me, at my company, no man takes parental leave. The wives of my colleagues make lunch every day. Professional moms are different, huh? Before giving birth, I used to make Kent's lunch every day. I didn't have time for that since the twins came, so he had to buy lunch or eat out. Kent seemed annoyed by this, and I felt his sarcasm. By then, my love for Kent had completely cooled. Could anyone still love their husband in this situation? Maybe it's time for a divorce. He hardly contributes to household chores, just complains. But raising twins alone, that's unsettling. I hesitated to take the step towards divorce, especially with the twins still so small. Meanwhile, the boys grew steadily. Rui remained a bit smaller, but eagerly drank both formula and breast milk. By 6 months, they could almost grow to average size. We started weaning. I learned recipes from Mom and Deanna, read books, and tried many things myself. Despite being twins, their food preferences were different, which was fun. Looking at the mushy baby food, Kent said, "Wow, how can they eat this? Looks disgusting." While saying that and feeding our son, I intervened. "Enough. I'll take over." To which he replied, "Why can you only talk to me like that? I'm doing my best in my own way. Carol, you like a cruel wife. Be a little nicer to me, I feel suffocated." His words brought tears to my eyes. Is it my fault? I'm trying hard, aren't I? That night, I thought to myself, maybe I had been too harsh on Kent. I felt a little remorse. To apologize, I made lunch for Ken the next day for the first time in a long time. Kent seemed happy and a little embarrassed. I made Kent lunch today, he was shyly happy about it. I told Deanna, who was at my house, and she responded, "Thanks for doing that for Kent, but you should let him buy his own lunch. He should be making it himself." We laughed about how Lewis would dislike that, and just then, my mobile phone rang. "Maybe it's a thank you call for the lunch?" Excited, I answered. "Where's the fork?" Kent's yelling echoed in my ears. "Sorry, what?" I responded. "Hey, cruel wife. How many times do I have to tell you? The fork. There's no fork in the lunch. Are you telling me to eat with my hands? What a ridiculous cruel wife." As I fell silent, he said to me, Is this payback for yesterday? You really have a bad attitude. Bring me a fork in 5 minutes. I felt bad about forgetting the fork. But did he need to be told this much? At that moment, I stopped seeing this man as family. Maybe it was too late, even by my own standards. My anger welled up and it reached its peak. Without regard to Deanna being next to me, I shouted, "Shut up! If there's no fork, then eat with your hands. Even a baby can eat with their hands, why can't you?" Perhaps Kent didn't expect such a reaction and said, "We're getting a divorce, that's it with you, the cruel wife. We'll talk when I get home." And hung up. I glanced at Deanna, who had an unexpected reaction. Kent came home very early that night, perhaps finishing work at a normal time. Behind him, Louis and Deanna were there. Louis sat down arrogantly and demanded, "Hey, coffee!" Thinking it was probably the last time I'd see this uncle, I silently made coffee. I've heard most of it from Kent. "Aren't you being a bit too selfish?" Louis spoke to me arrogantly as usual, laughing at the idea of a housewife being so bossy. I was an office worker, just on parental leave, but I didn't feel like explaining. I said, "Really? I just get so irritated with Kent, who shows no responsibility or awareness as a father after the birth of our children." Louis sighed. "Men are like that. I was the same. It can't be helped. You're the reason we couldn't have grandchildren for so long, yet you haven't apologized to our family? Huh? What did this man just say? So that's why he was so harsh on me." Kent looked uneasy next to Louis, who demanded an apology. "Really? That's a lie from Kent. The issue lies with your son." I pulled out Kent's medical results and slammed them in front of Louis. Even Louis was taken aback and accused him. "Carol, I'm sorry. I said those things, but I don't really want a divorce. I apologize for lying about the test results, I just couldn't believe them." Kent apparently didn't want a divorce. He probably thought bringing Louis and Deanna would work in his favor. I quietly handed him the divorce papers. "A joke, right? Rui and Ray are still so young. You want to make them poor fatherless children? Better fatherless than with a father like you. You're always lying, Kent. You never change, always saying you'll do your best. When have you done? I'm tired too. Let me be free. And, you think I don't know anything?" Kent looked confused. "A lot of people at your company heard today's call. It's embarrassing. A colleague called me, worried. That's when I heard about the parental leave. You said you didn't need it, all lies." Concerned about me with the twins, Kent's boss had asked to him, "How long will you take for maternity leave?" Despite that, Kent had declined. It was also revealed that Kent could have left work on time on some days, but he deliberately stayed late. Kent was silent and downcast at my words. Seeing this, Louis intervened. "Well, you know, men have their own circles. Supporting that is a wife's role. You'll understand eventually." He looked at Deanna as if seeking agreement. Deanna scoffed at Louis. "That's something I'll never understand, no matter how many years pass." Louis was taken aback by her reaction. Ignoring Louis, Deanna said, "Kent, let Carol go. Make sure to pay proper child support. That's the least you can do." Not expecting this from Deanna, Kent looked helplessly at Louis. Then, Louis suggested something outrageous. "If you divorce, leave one child here." "The bigger one, yes, that one." Pointing at our eldest son, Rui. I was so angry that I almost hit Louis. Then Deanna slapped Louis, shouting, "Enough already!" Louis was shocked and exclaimed, What have you done? We might as well divorce too." As if waiting for these words, Deanna said, "Really? Thank you. Then please sign here." "I've already done." 2 divorce papers were laid out on the table. The 2 men remained silent and seemed to be thinking. This wasn't supposed to happen. After Kent yelled at me on the phone, Deanna chuckled and said, Kent grew up watching Lewis treated women poorly. A foolish husband and a foolish son, pathetic. Carol, I've reached my limit too. The end of a man who can't do anything alone must be ridiculous, don't you think? Let's make them regret it. I felt a bit scared seeing Deanna's face, but realized she must have endured worse treatment for a long time. Kent and Lewis filled out the divorce papers while saying, "Regret this," and handed them over as if throwing them. They frustrated me till the end, but Deanna and I were finally free. I returned to my parents' home. My brother's family had moved nearby, so their children could attend a local high school. Deanna, having received her share of the assets, moved close to my parents' home. She's become quite close with my mom and visits her often. The boys are happy, loved by their 2 grandmothers. As for Kent, the fork incident became widely known at work, and he lost respect, especially among female colleagues, being whispered about as a women's enemy. He's unlikely to engage in office romance again. Due to his poor domestic skills, he's been demoted from his manager position, as customers complained about his sloppy, unhygienic appearance. His diet has deteriorated, and he's gained weight. Feeling uncomfortable, he recently requested a transfer. By the time I return from parental leave, Kent won't be at the same company. Similarly, Lewis's personal life suffered. He tried to make this incident a laughing matter with his superiors over drinks, but the room fell silent. The way I see it, a man who can't treasure his family isn't worth much. The CEO personally told him, so Lewis's remaining months until retirement will be uncomfortable. He'll likely spend his old age alone. Both got what they deserved. Deanna started part-time work at a nearby grocery store and seems to be enjoying her days. I'm happy for her. The twins, Rui and Ray, are about to celebrate their first birthday. A few days ago, the 2 of them started walking at the same time. I was so moved that I couldn't help but burst into tears. They have different food preferences, but they like the same toys and are now playfully fighting over them, saying "ah. Ah." Watching them, I vowed to be a strong mother. You're not allowed in here. Linda blocked my way, standing right in front of me. I reconsidered, thinking maybe the funeral was not ready yet, but I was not just an attendee, I was a family member. I looked into Linda's face for an answer, but there was none written there. You can't come in. No, but I'm Tom's wife. At my attempt to reason, Linda bursted into laughter. There is no way a wife is a family member. You're an outsider, so you can't attend the funeral. Get it? Now please leave. Linda pointed towards the door, urging me to exit. Swallowing what I wanted to say, I stared straight into her face. So should I really leave? My name is Kate, edging into my mid-30s at 35 years old. I work as a lawyer in a small legal office in a regional city. I married Tom, my colleague and age mate from the same office, 5 years ago. Being ambitious, Tom switched to a major law firm 3 years ago and has been busy ever since. He suggested I switch too, but I declined. I was content with my current office and job. My work, though, was a bit different from what the general public imagines for a lawyer. Primarily, I supported rehabilitation for those recently out of prison or on probation. I assisted with legal procedures and connect them with welfare and medical professionals when needed. Many imagine lawyers as flamboyantly active in courtrooms. That's exactly Tom's job, bustling between the court and office daily. Of course, I was not uninterested in such work. However, an incident led me to take an interest in rehabilitation support. Linda was displeased with this and looked down on my job as helping those who've strayed from society. I understood her to some extent. The world is always harsh on offenders. Of course, I don't believe offenders should be redeemed without atoning either. But Linda's disdain was extreme. It's not just my job she despised, but me personally. Every time we met at my in-laws' house, she never missed a chance for snide remarks. When will Kate quit her job to have kids? Linda's sarcastic voice reached me as I assisted Jack. For years, Jack's health had been failing, requiring in-home care, which Linda barely provided. So, I filled in, enduring Linda's barbs as I care for Jack. But Kate's middle-aged now, maybe kids are out of the question. Why didn't Tom marry someone younger? Ignoring Linda's complaints, I gently laid Jack on the bed. Trying not to catch Linda's attention, I sighed. Then, Jack's lips moved slightly, seemingly saying not to worry. I smiled awkwardly at Jack. No matter how busy I was or how much Linda taunted me, I didn't stop caring for Jack. Sadly, Jack's condition kept worsening. Just a week ago, he was able to enjoy fruits, but now he can't chew. Not just me, Linda too was shocked by Jack's rapid decline. To the point of avoiding his room. Doctors said he had a week left at most. Realizing his end, Jack insisted on no more hospitalizations, wanting to stay home. Jack apologized repeatedly for the trouble as I cared for him, but I've never felt burdened. Jack seemed to resent his dependence on others for survival. I tried to spend my days with Jack as cheerfully as possible, hiding the shock I harbored within. That changed with a single, desperate accusation from Linda. "You're just after Jack's inheritance, aren't you?" Linda hurled these words at me as I was about to enter Jack's room with his change of clothes. Confused, I stood frozen in the hallway. "All your caregiving won't earn you a cent." Wait a minute. I never said anything about wanting the inheritance. As I protested, Linda's eyes widened even more. "You're trying to get on Jack's good side to influence his will, aren't you?" "I know it, even if you don't say it, Kate." Linda glared at me angrily, but I couldn't understand. Until she mentioned it, I hadn't thought of the inheritance at all. I purely wanted to be there for Jack, making his remaining time comfortable, choosing to spend more time with him than at work. I had no ulterior motive to receive an inheritance through my caregiving. Tom, alerted by the commotion, came upstairs. "What's going on here? Why are you shouting?" "Tom," Linda's saying. "Listen, Tom. This woman, she's after Jack's inheritance." Linda's words drowned out mine. Hearing Linda's claim, Tom's expression darkened. "Kate, are you really after the inheritance?" Faced with Tom's suspicious gaze, I shook my head. "Of course not. You know, Tom. Linda hasn't been caring for Jack at all." "That's not true. I'm not involved because you said to leave it to you." I felt dizzy at Linda's absurd claims. She was trying to paint me as the villain, feeding all sorts of things to Tom. I prayed Tom wouldn't just take Linda's words at face value, but my hope was in vain. Tom looked at me with contempt. "So, what Mom said was true?" Tom muttered to himself, seemingly convinced. At that moment, Linda smirked at me. A look of victory visible only to me. "I can't trust someone who insults Mom to care for Dad. Please leave this house." Tom's voice was cold as he made this declaration. Struggling to find my voice, I managed to speak. "Who will care for Jack then?" "It's obviously Mom." "Who else?" Caught off guard by being suddenly addressed, Linda panicked. She probably hadn't expected to be tasked with caring for Jack herself. I handed her Jack's clothes, her smile strained. "I'm a bit busy today. But Kate can do it instead. Just no inheritance." With that, Linda hurried downstairs. Tom, seeing me with the clothes, tersely told me not to do anything unnecessary and followed Linda down. I couldn't believe my actions were misconstrued this way. Feeling dejected, I entered Jack's room. Jack, thought to be asleep, was sitting up slowly in his electric bed, watching me intently. "Did you hear that?" I asked awkwardly, and Jack nodded slowly. He motioned for me to sit beside the bed. As I gently took a seat in a nearby chair, Jack began to speak in a whispery, frail voice. "Kate, I know better than anyone that you're not the kind of person to do such things." Jack muttered in pain, his words coming out in fits and starts.
I'm truly grateful for everything you've done. I can't thank you enough.
Having said what he needed to, Jack slowly closed his eyes. And that was our last conversation. The funeral, per Jack's wishes, was to be held at my in-laws' house. It was planned as a small ceremony, with only family, relatives, and a few close acquaintances. On the day, it was raining from morning, and I was careful not to get my mourning clothes wet as I walked to the in-laws' house. Tom, serving as the chief mourner, had left home earlier than me. He's probably meeting up with Linda by now, going over the day's proceedings. The misunderstanding that I was after Jack's inheritance hadn't been cleared. Since that incident, Tom blatantly looked down on me. Now fully on Linda's side, I watched him without thought. With Jack gone, everything seemed inconsequential to me. Upon reaching the in-laws' house, Linda was waiting at the entrance. As I tried to pass her with a brief greeting, she grabbed my arm. "You're not allowed in here." "What?" Linda stood there, blocking my way. I thought maybe things weren't ready, but I was not just an attendee, I was a part of the family. I looked into Linda's face for an answer, but it wasn't there. "There's no way you can enter." "No, but I'm also Tom's wife." At my response, Linda burst out laughing. "There is no way a wife is a family member. You're an outsider. You can't attend the funeral. Understand? Now please leave." Linda pointed at the front door, urging me to leave. I swallowed what I wanted to say and stared straight into her face. So should I really leave? Perhaps it was my unexpectedly strong gaze that made Linda falter for a moment. She looked at me suspiciously, thinking if I had some ulterior motives. But finding nothing, Linda turned her back to me. "Just leave, please. I don't even want to see your face." Linda tried to dismiss me with a somewhat blustering tone. There was only one thing left for me to do. Leave quietly. It was regrettable that I couldn't say my final goodbye to Jack, but it was the only option. "Please tell the relatives I'm sorry I couldn't attend." With that last bit of resistance, I left the in-laws' house. As I did, a man in a black funeral attire entered. He looked surprised to see me. I laughed off his questioning gaze, which seemed to ask why I was leaving before the funeral. I couldn't have lied under his scrutinizing gaze. Suddenly, the area around the in-laws' house felt like a different world. Several black luxury cars were parked nearby. Shouts from the entrance reached my ears, making me stop in my tracks. Amidst the men's angry shouts, I heard Linda's scream and Tom's anguished voice. The curious neighbors peeked out from their doors and windows, intrigued by the commotion. Sighing, I returned to the in-laws' house. I didn't want to help Linda, but letting the situation escalate would be problematic. As I appeared among the men, a glimpse of hope flickered in Linda's eyes, who was almost crying. "Kate! Help! These people say they're the mafia!" I felt like holding my head in despair at this expected turn of events. But I was the only one who could resolve the situation. I spotted a familiar face among the men and called out to him. "You all seem as lively as ever." The man noticed my return and smiled. "Well, if Kate's in trouble, we can't just stand by." Linda let out a short scream when she saw me. "You're with the mafia too!" Linda trembled at her own misunderstanding. That's absurd. But I quickly dismissed it. The men surrounding Linda and Tom stepped aside, allowing a path. Walking through was a man in a tailor-made black funeral suit, his gaze intense. It was Ben, the man I had passed when leaving the in-laws' house earlier. "Quite bold to turn away a benefactor of our organization, aren't you?" Linda, intimidated by Ben, collapsed to the ground. "We have nothing to do with the mafia," Linda bravely retorted, but she recoiled, still sitting on the floor as the men closed in. Tom stood frozen in the corner, wanting nothing to do with the situation. "Does this woman know anything?" Ben asked me in surprise. I shook my head. I turned to Linda, still sitting on the floor, and addressed her. "Do you remember what happened 7 years ago when Jack was arrested?" Linda's face contorted, possibly recalling the incident. 7 years ago, Jack was arrested as a suspect in a case. I, still a novice lawyer then, was in charge of his defense. To put it simply, Jack was innocent. He had not committed the crime. But Jack stubbornly insisted he was guilty, as if protecting someone. The person Jack was protecting was a member of our organization. Ben added solemnly. Eventually, persuaded by senior members, a younger member came forward, and Jack was released. But the price of the stand-in was heavy, and Jack's reintegration into society was difficult. That's when I developed an interest in rehabilitation support. While legally supporting Jack's reintegration, I also served as a liaison with the mafia trying to contact him. Arrests and releases were common in the mafia. Every time, I was called upon to spend days with them. Kate not only looked after Jack but also our younger members. Nobody usually wants to take care of people fresh out of prison. It seemed the mafia's reputation for loyalty wasn't just a fiction. They felt indebted to Jack for trying to take the fall for one of their young members and vowed to always help when in trouble. And somehow, that promise had extended to me. Kate's like our consulting lawyer. Ben turned to me with a smile that didn't quite match his sharp gaze. Still intimidated by Ben's changing expressions, I nodded awkwardly. Ben, who had smiled at me, now glared at Linda as if he had long forgotten the earlier moment. "Where did you put Jack's money?" A very cold voice echoed in the entrance hall. Linda finally started to tremble. Looking for an excuse, her gaze wandered meaninglessly. "Tell the truth," Ben said casually, and Linda broke down. Tears flowed as she shook her head in anger. "I spent it all. It's all dirty money anyway. Whatever my husband earns is mine to spend. What's wrong with using it?" Tom somehow managed to keep the agitated Linda from storming out of the house. Ben, who is accustomed to overwhelmingly tense situations, watched this without changing his expression. "Jack's money wasn't dirty. It was hard-earned cash from a burger joint, saved by our young guys. Did you spend everything Jack was saving to leave for Kate?" Ben's outcry echoed around. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Let me apologize on her behalf, please, no violence." Tom was the first to reach his limit. He apologized deeply without a hint of shame. I was astounded watching Tom, who had been silent till now, turn apologetic when he sensed personal danger. He even said sorry to me for doubting me, but I was not in the mood to listen. "Can you pay back everything Jack saved for Kate?" Ben deliberately intimidated Tom and Linda with his glare. They nodded like puppets, their faces pale. Linda had embezzled over $100,000 of Jack's savings. It was shocking to learn that not only Linda but also Tom had been spending Jack's savings on drinks for colleagues and lottery tickets. Tom, suspected of private dealings with the mafia, was forced to resign from the law firm. I planned to divorce Tom once everything was settled. With Jack gone, I saw no need to force myself to maintain ties with Tom or Linda. Linda, under pressure from the mafia, sold her house and moved into an old, cheap apartment, working from morning till night. All to repay every penny of Jack's savings she had used. I never intended to take the money, but Ben insisted that Linda should fully understand the consequences of using someone else's money, so I agreed to go along with it. I continued to devote myself to my work, but recently a colleague invited me to start a new office together. They had always watched my work and thought I deserved a more liberating environment. I accepted the invitation and now spend busy yet fulfilling days establishing the new office. Are you trying to ruin our wedding? It's not like that. I just wanted to say that you're spending too much money unnecessarily. I know you are poor, but Ryan is going to be the next president of the company, right? He doesn't need to worry about money. Even if he is the next president, this is too much. That's not true. I just wanted to see your happy face, and when I told Ryan that, he was willing to do anything I said. What? It seems he really likes you. He generously spent money whenever it was for you. Her words hit me like a stab with a knife. As I looked at her face in surprise, and she looked back at me with a sly smile. You took advantage of his feelings for me. Anger welled up inside me. To that, Jessica added another shocking statement. So what? If you're going to complain more, can you please leave? We don't need a low-educated, poor mother. Please don't associate with us ever again. Her words, filled with a sense of superiority, rapidly fueled my anger. I won't forgive this. Enjoy your triumph while it lasts. As she walked away looking down on me, I stared at her back, making a firm resolution to attend the reception. My name is Amy. I was widowed and now live with my son Ryan. My parents' home was poor, so I started working right after graduating from junior high. Later, I met and married a man who started his own company. Decades later, even when my husband's business stabilized and we had more financial freedom, my habit of saving remained, and I still live that way today. Neither my husband nor Ryan ever spoke ill of my frugality. Instead, they accepted it and joined me in being economical. Ryan, with his generous nature, even now as a working adult, accepts my frugality without complaint. After my husband passed away, the company is now led by my brother-in-law, Dylan, as the president. Ryan works there and is a candidate for the next president. Despite this, he hasn't let it go to his head and continues to live as usual. He, whom I raised alone after my husband's death, is my pride and joy. Sometimes I worry that he's too considerate and putting himself under strain, but his kindness is also something I'm proud of. Since working for the company, he has become even more independent, and recently he has become a very reliable man. So, when he told me he had a girlfriend, I felt a bit lonely, but I was happy enough to genuinely wish them well. She was introduced to me by a friend, and she's really a great person. He spoke with joy, and I smiled back. I want to start a family soon to give Mom peace of mind. That's why I'm thinking about marrying my girlfriend. Oh, thank you. But you haven't been together that long, right? Don't rush into marriage just because you're worried about me. It's your life, Ryan. Make sure you make the decision for yourself. It's heartwarming to know he cares about me. But I didn't want him to choose his life partner just to reassure his mother. However, knowing that he has a girlfriend, seeing how happy he is, and above all, realizing how much he thinks of me, warms my heart. I thought to myself how lucky I am to have him. 6 months after hearing about his girlfriend, they seemed really serious about marriage, and he said she would be coming to our house. Though he had spoken about his girlfriend Jessica before, this would be my first time meeting her. I was looking forward to meeting Jessica, who might become his wife. Amy, is it true you didn't go to college? And yet you managed to raise such a fine child as Ryan. This was said by Jessica after we introduced ourselves and chatted a bit, while Ryan had stepped away from the table. She looked at me with a provocative gaze. Yes. He has really grown up to be a fine young man. I barely managed to reply, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of discomfort from her words. Though she seemed to be praising him, I felt there was a mocking tone towards me. Fine, huh? You don't hold back on the praise. Usually, people are more modest. Oh, maybe you don't know these common social norms, not having gone to college. What? Sorry, I was just wondering. It's really amazing, though. Raising a child in a fatherless home, I could never do that. Her words said one thing, but her mouth was slightly smirking. What were you two talking about? When he returned and asked, she promptly replied. We were just talking about how amazing Amy is for raising such a wonderful person like you. I really respect Amy. She said this with a smile at me. But I felt a thorn in her words and couldn't help feeling uneasy. That's right. He is going to be the next president, isn't he? The conversation shifted to the future of the two of them, and inevitably to his upcoming promotion. Jessica seemed captivated by the idea of he becoming the next president. In contrast, he responded calmly. It's just because my uncle is the president, and that's what people say. I'm still inexperienced and need to study and grow more. It's Dad's company, so I can't take over halfway and let it fail. What? But you'll become the president eventually, right? she asked, a bit flustered. I'll work hard to make that happen. He replied with a smile, but she seemed somewhat unsatisfied. Before talking about being president, I need to get promoted first. The responsibilities vary with each position, and I need to understand those roles too. When I gave this advice, he nodded firmly. Her eyes sparkled again. When you get promoted, your salary will increase, right? Since you're talked about as the next president, I guess your income will keep getting better. Her interest seemed piqued by words like next president and salary. The discomfort I felt towards her remained even after she left. Hey, I hate to say this, but do you think Jessica is marrying you for your money? She seemed really interested in your salary and the talk of you becoming the next president. I couldn't help but ask him. It's his life and his family. I may not have a right to interfere, but I couldn't stay silent, considering his happiness. But Ryan denied it. I don't think so. She is concerned about money because she plans to manage our finances after we get married. Finances are important in marriage. Oh, so you two have talked it over. Yeah. She said she would manage our finances after we marry. She's always been responsible, so it'll be fine. If that's the case. Mom, I'm 28 now. I'm an adult, so don't worry about me that much. His smile swept away my worries. Seeing his expression, I came to a realization. Maybe I was just feeling something like jealousy towards her. Is this how a mother feels when her son is getting married? That thought strangely made sense to me. But I would later realize that this idea was a mistake. A year after meeting Jessica, their wedding is today. I don't know any details about the wedding. She asked me not to interfere too much. Indeed, the wedding is about the two of them, and it's an important event for their future married life. I decided to quietly watch over them and looked forward to this day. But, when I arrived at the venue, I was so surprised that I was rooted to the spot. Because the rented venue was decorated so lavishly, it was beyond what ordinary people could afford. In the waiting room, there was a quiz corner where guests could guess the color of the dress Jessica would wear for her dress change. I had seen such features in weddings before, but there was one clear difference this time. There were 2 dress changes, and the dresses were in 2 different colors. Furthermore, the menu listed ingredients that were extravagantly high-end. Even the entertainment included a professional magician. I had attended many weddings, but this was the first time I saw one so luxurious and obviously expensive. I never imagined experiencing this at my own son's wedding. It was just too much. Feeling anxious and worried about their wedding, I decided I had to talk to Ryan and headed to their waiting room. Then I saw Dylan and Jessica. She was humbly and politely responding to Dylan's congratulations. Thank you so much. Please continue to look after him. I'll do my best to support him too. Of course. We have high hopes for him. I'm counting on you as well. Yes, I'll do my utmost. As she smiled at me, Jessica's expression turned scornful in an instant. Feeling uneasy, I hurried over to her. Then I asked about the situation. Jessica, it's been a while. You told me not to interfere too much, so I've been quiet, but isn't this too extravagant? One dress change is enough. The wedding should be more modest. While I was flustered, she looked relaxed and unapologetically replied, It's already decided. Bringing it up now is troublesome. My mind went blank, unable to find words. She then looked at me with the same provocative eyes as when we first met. Are you trying to ruin our wedding? It's not like that. I just wanted to say that you're spending too much money unnecessarily. I know you are poor, but Ryan is going to be the next president, right? He doesn't need to worry about money. Even if he is the next president, this is too much. That's not true. I just wanted to see your happy face, and when I told him that, he was willing to do anything I said. What? It seems he really likes you. He generously spent money whenever it was for you. Her words hit me like a stab with a knife. Shocked, I looked at her face, and she was giving me a disdainful look. You took advantage of his feelings for me. Anger welled up inside me. To that, she added another shocking statement. So what? If you're going to complain more, can you please leave? We don't need a low-educated, poor mother. Please don't associate with us ever again. Her words, filled with a sense of superiority, rapidly fueled my anger. I won't forgive this. Enjoy your triumph while it lasts. I, seething with anger but resolute, stared at her back as she walked away, looking down on me, and then I joined the reception. May I now have Amy, the mother of the groom, come forward? The MC announced, guiding me to the microphone. I knew I had to give a speech, as Ryan had informed me beforehand, but it seemed Jessica was unaware. The situation was different from what I had imagined. Jessica, who had told me to leave, was now silently exuding a disgruntled aura as I, who she told to leave, was about to give a speech. Thank you all for joining us today to celebrate the marriage of Ryan and Jessica. Ryan and I have always supported each other throughout our lives. I began my speech, sharing my thoughts about Ryan. After narrating old episodes, I continued. However, it seems that from today, I must let go of him. Therefore, I am firing him. The room erupted in murmurs. Dylan, along with other company attendees, looked shocked and confused. The noise in the room grew louder. Among them, Jessica was the first to speak out. Fired? What are you talking about? Amy, who isn't even part of the company, can't make such decisions. You should think before you speak. Even as a mother, there are limits. Jessica, what are you saying? I am firing Ryan. You said you didn't need a low-educated, poor me, and told me to never associate with you again. That's... Moreover, it seems you were only after his money. And Ryan, choosing someone like you, I can't trust him anymore. That's why I am firing him. My words intensified the murmurs in the room. Jessica, her harsh words exposed, turned red-faced. Ryan, glaring at her, questioned. What do you mean a low-educated, poor mom is unnecessary? Did you say that to Mom? And about being after money. It's fine, isn't it? We're going to live together. We don't need your mom, who has neither education nor money. Even if she says that, she can't fire you. Mom is the chairperson of my company. What? Her face, which was red, now turned pale upon hearing his words. In a clearly panicked tone, she responded. But, you said she didn't go to college. How can someone like that be a chairperson? That's the truth. The company was started by Dad. Mom has been involved since its foundation. Now, she understands the company more than anyone and holds the real executive power. Why didn't you tell me such important things earlier? If you had, none of this would have happened. Instead of apologizing, she began blaming him. But he looked at her with disdain. I plan to tell you about the company's details eventually. But now, there's no need. The marriage is off, so there's no need to explain anymore. What? What do you mean the marriage is off? It's obvious. I can't marry you, who looks down on Mom and is only after money. The wedding is cancelled. His voice carried an air of authority. Jessica, realizing the gravity of the situation, suddenly turned to me, desperately seeking support. Please forgive me, Amy. I didn't know you were the chairperson, and I was terribly rude. I won't belittle you anymore. She said, but of course, I had no intention of forgiving her. That's impossible. You mean you would have continued to belittle me if I weren't the chairperson? I can't be family with someone who can't respect others and whose hobby is squandering money. Goodbye. With that, I started to leave the venue. Following me, Dylan stood up, and then the other attendees began to prepare to leave. Wait, please don't go, everyone! She screamed, but no one even looked at her with sympathy. My relatives expressed relief that he hadn't married such a person, and Jessica's relatives looked utterly disgusted. Her friends, who had been condescending thinking she would become a CEO's wife, were also displeased with her recent attitude and quickly began to leave. Everyone left Jessica standing there, stunned. Ryan and I returned the wedding gifts, apologizing to the guests as we saw them off. After everyone had left, he muttered apologetically, "Mom, I'm sorry. I wanted to reassure you, but instead, it turned out we can't even work together anymore. That's why I told you not to worry about me so much. And about the firing, that's no longer happening." Eh? I said I couldn't trust you who choose a partner only after money. That's why I was going to fire you. But now that the marriage with Jessica is off, I won't fire you. He looked perplexed by my words. "Thank you, Mom. I'll work even harder from now on. Your happiness is what matters most to me." I gently patted his back. Later, he officially broke off the engagement with Jessica, and they decided to split the wedding costs. Jessica had assumed Ryan would pay for the entire wedding and keep the gifts from her attendees for herself. Unable to pay her credit card bills for the esthetician, beauty salon, and other expenses, she ended up in debt. She, already unemployed and without money, hastily tried to marry for money again, but her next partner turned out to be a marriage scammer, further increasing her debt. Now, her whereabouts are unknown. Meanwhile, our family bond strengthened even more after this incident. Ryan seemed to respect me more than ever, now focusing on work rather than marriage to reassure me. Thanks to his dedication, the company grew even more. Recently, the president of a company we've long done business with introduced his daughter to Ryan. I've worked with his daughter a few times, and Ryan seems quite interested in this new acquaintance. It looks like a wonderful meeting for him, who has now fully grown into a fine man, and I'm excited for him. Mommy's promise comes first, so please go to the hospital with this. My husband takes out $20 from his wallet and hands it to me. Overwhelmed by the unexpected turn of events, I could only stand dumbfounded, watching him drive away in his car. Unbelievably, he left his wife, struggling with her water broken, to prioritize picking up and dropping off his mother for her hobby classes. Despite the harassment from his mother and the numerous difficulties I faced, I tolerated it all, thinking of our soon-to-be-born child. But now, it's clear to me. Someone who treats their child so poorly doesn't deserve to be a parent. Bearing the recurring pain, I made up my mind to face childbirth alone. My name is Kristen. I married Scott right after graduating from college. Scott and I have an age difference of 3 years, and we have led a fairly happy life. He was one of my college clubmates. He seemed to have taken a liking to me when I joined as a freshman, and looking back, his passionate advances were almost embarrassing. As a young adult, a guy's appealing inevitably seemed cool, and I reciprocated his affection, leading to a smooth relationship from 3 months after my enrollment until graduation. Even after marriage, he was deeply in love with me, so I never worried about infidelity. He boasted at work about his happiness in returning home on time every day to eat the dinner I cooked while it was still warm, so I doubted any woman would intentionally approach him. However, he has always been particularly kind to women, attracting some attention. But since he was always devoted to me, I never let my gaze wander. Yet, there's a reason why I described our seemingly perfect marriage as fairly happy. That reason is his mother, Evelyn's presence. I thought the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflict was a thing of the past, but she frowned upon seeing me. "What's the purpose for today?" It was all of a sudden. "You should have informed me in advance so that I could be prepared properly. Besides, you have no gifts even being invited home. It's just bad manners. You knew you were meeting us, you should have taken care of all of these." "Oh, dear, why don't you leave my son and go home today?" That's what she said during my first visit to my in-laws' house before our marriage, and being still young, I turned pale with fear. Although I told her about the schedule to visit beforehand, indeed, I should have brought some gifts to meet Evely for the first time at her house. Feeling embarrassed and frustrated at being seen through, I remained downcast for a while. It was my fault for the etiquette breach, but if Evelyn had been a bit more restrained in her words, I wouldn't have been so upset. Because of my failure, I was virtually separated from Scott and had to return home alone from my first visit to my in-laws, leading to a phone call from Scott later. Mommy was nervous and ended up being a bit harsh. She actually likes you, Kristen, so don't worry. She approves of our marriage and really wants you to visit again. At that moment, I was infuriated by his optimistic tone. He didn't advise me before visiting her house and wouldn't stop Evelyn when she insulted me right in front of him. Her wanting me to visit again was undoubtedly not her true intention. Would marrying him mean being pressured into living together and facing daily harassment? Surprisingly, she made no such suggestions when I decided to marry Scott. However, relieved for only a moment, she began frequently summoning Scott to her house. Just when you finally graduated from a distant university and got a job locally, you're getting married. I've been so lonely. Why don't you let Kristen have a break and stay with me for a week or so? Such messages would arrive for Scott, terrifying me. Showing me the message, he asked, "What should we do?" In his place, I called Evelyn right there and then. "I'm sorry for the inconvenience after your kind consideration, but we still haven't finished unpacking and handling paperwork from the move. I think it will be a while before Scott can relax. Sorry." When I said this, "Just unpack by yourself. Don't always rely on my son." She grumbled, but I simply nodded along and ended the call. Her offer to ease my burden was just a pretext, but she wanted her beloved son by her side. My anger rose towards Evelyn for her lack of consideration, even though we were newlyweds, and also towards Scott, who just laughed off the situation and wouldn't say no. According to him, Evelyn has always been like this. Her overprotectiveness worsened after divorcing Scott's father, and she even cried and tried to stop him from going to college. Somehow, he convinced her and went, but they kept in constant contact through messages and calls. He trusts his mother, who raised him as a single parent, so their relationship has always been good, as I knew from our dating days. It's great to be caring towards a child and a mother, but as adults, there should be a proper distance. However, this closeness was normal for them, and I knew it wasn't right to interfere in another family's dynamics. If it weren't for this, Scott, who is serious about both work and house chores and has a good personality, would have been perfect, so I tried to accept it. But it wasn't long before I couldn't overlook the excessive closeness between the two. One holiday, when Scott usually sleeps till noon, he woke up earlier than me and started preparing to go out. "Did we have plans to go somewhere today?" I asked. "I'm going out shopping with Mommy, so you can stay and sleep." And he replied unbelievably. Apparently, Evelyn wanted to buy clothes and asked him for his opinion. Angry at his willingness to go, "We have a day off together for the first time in a while, let's do something." I controlled my emotions and suggested, but Scott shook his head. "I'd like that, but I've already promised Mommy, and she seems to be waiting outside." Shocked by his words, I went to the entrance in my pajamas. Looking out the window, I saw Evelyn's bright red car parked in the yard. Noticing my gaze, Evelyn got out of her car, smirking, with her bright red lipstick. "Scott, you're late." "Oh, Kristen is still asleep? Such a lazy wife for my son. Maybe I should buy you an alarm clock as a souvenir?" Mocking me, she affectionately took Scott's hand and led him to the passenger seat. I was dumbfounded by their close relationship and could only watch Evelyn's car drive away swiftly. After this incident, Scott's behavior began to change gradually. He hardly did any housework he used to do routinely and often went to his mother's house almost every weekend. His attitude towards me changed too, becoming more demanding. "Kristen, you're too lazy. If I'm off, you just sleep along. Can you call that fulfilling your duties as a housewife? You don't even put on makeup when you're at home. It's not good to slack off just because you're a wife. Mommy is worried about you too. Why don't you visit her alone sometime?" I didn't know what Evelyn was saying about me, but his agreement was troubling. He had never mentioned napping or makeup during our relationship. But as he said, perhaps Evelyn was genuinely concerned about my behavior. I tried to convince myself of this multiple times, but knowing Evelyn's behavior towards Scott, it seemed more like harassment. I thought Evelyn's curse would change once we had a child. Soon after my doubts about Scott began, I discovered I was pregnant. He was thrilled, promising to support me. But Evelyn's harassment intensified. Summoning Scott for trivial tasks like shopping, doctor visits, and cleaning her house, effectively leaving me alone. When I explained Evelyn's malicious intentions to him, it backfired. Suddenly, he became infuriated and said, "Every time Mommy sees you, she talks about you. How you should go back to your parents' house, or how you need time alone. Getting angry over such things will affect the baby in your womb. Just indulge in Mommy's feelings." He began leaving me alone more often. As time passed, my morning sickness worsened, and I told him I wanted him to stay with me as much as possible because I felt uneasy being alone. But Scott replied, "What can I do even if I'm with you?" Mommy also wanted to be alone during her pregnancy, didn't even want to see Dad's face. He wouldn't listen to anything I said. Feeling physically and mentally unstable, I lost the energy to argue back and resolved to fight this battle alone. Then, one day, while Scott and I were shopping for baby items, we bumped into his colleague who said to me, "Scott, I heard you've been actively attending parenting classes. Your home bookshelf is filled with parenting books, right? Accompanying your wife for shopping today, you're going to be a great dad for sure. Can't wait for your child to be born." Shocked, "Huh?" I blurted out. Scott quickly intervened, "Please stop." Laughing off in a joking manner. Turns out, Scott had been pretending at work to be an attentive new father, even fabricating stories. I kept silent about this to his colleague to avoid any trouble, but felt a rising anger inside. Still, he continued to prioritize his time with Evelyn, and whenever I met his colleagues, "Your wife has caught herself an ideal husband," they would say. Such incidents gradually made me distrust his actions and words. I can't say for sure if this stress was the cause, but one weekend, while preparing lunch, I noticed my pants were wet. A thought crossed my mind, and I rushed to the bathroom. As I suspected, my water had broken. I yelled towards the room where Scott was still sleeping, telling him to get the car ready immediately. He, still groggy, became anxious upon hearing about the water break and supported me as I walked. The nurses had repeatedly told us to come to the hospital immediately if my water broke, as there could be urgent risks. Scott, slightly panicked, helped me into the car amidst my contractions. Just as we started driving, his mobile phone rang. Unable to answer while driving, I glanced at the screen while struggling with the pain. Seeing Evelyn's name, I had a bad feeling. The phone kept ringing, and after staring at the screen for a while, I reluctantly answered. "Scott, where are you? It's Wednesday, the day of my sewing class. Did you forget?" Her flirting voice terrified me, but I explained to her, "Evelyn, actually, my water just broke, and Scott is taking me to the hospital right now." As soon as I spoke, Evelyn yelled as if she was a different person. "That's your problem, isn't it? I don't care. Using Scott, who's resting, as a taxi is quite a position you're in. Let me talk to Scott. Today is my regular sewing class day, and I have a prior appointment." I was speechless at her disregard, even for her grandchild's well-being. Her shrill voice continued to echo, even as I remained silent. "Sorry, Kristen," Scott muttered. For a moment, I thought he was apologizing for Evelyn yelling at me, but then I realized Scott had walked around to the back seat where I was lying and opened the door. Confused and enduring the pain, I was stunned. Then he said, "I had promised to drive Mommy, so could you take a taxi or an ambulance from here? I'll definitely catch up later, so go ahead." Wait a minute! Are you prioritizing a sewing class over your own child? Since you won't listen to me, please convince Evelyn yourself. The pain is getting worse, hurry! I raised my voice out of desperation, but he, frowning as well, replied, "It's a weekly commitment, can't be helped, right? I'm sorry I forgot to tell you about it. Here's some money, please manage with this." He took out $20 from his wallet and shoved it into my bag. Then he got back in the driver's seat and left without hesitation. I can't believe it! The place where he dropped me off was still close to our house. Concerned about the neighbors seeing me, I hurriedly searched for a taxi company. The amniotic fluid continued to trickle down my legs, and panic set in as I realized the danger to my unborn child. Tears welled up in my eyes as I struggled with the phone, wondering why my baby and I had to suffer like this. Kristen! Startled, I turned around and saw a familiar face. You look terrible! Forget talking, just get in the car! The person got out of their car, gently supported me, and helped me into the back seat. Her husband adjusted the seat and drove. My memory of what followed is hazy. Upon reaching the hospital, I was quickly wheeled in a wheelchair and taken to a prepared room by nurses. The pain was so severe that I was moaning, but I was told there was still time before delivery, so I rested there. The pain was so intense that I nearly lost consciousness, and suddenly, my mobile phone rang. Thinking it might be a callback from a call to my mother during the journey, I was shocked to see it was Scott. Looking at the clock, it was already evening. 3 hours had passed since I left, and in disbelief, I decided not to answer. But as the calls persisted, I answered in irritation. Kristen, help me! I want you to explain the situation. Not a single word of concern for me, and I had no idea what had happened to him. Help me. That's it. Even if he was being eaten by a crocodile, I had no obligation to help someone who could abandon his own child. Who do you think you are, saying such things? I yelled through the phone at him and hung up. Some time later, I went into labor alone. Though I wished for Scott's support, I was better off without a foolish man who couldn't prioritize correctly. Instead, a kind nurse supported me, and by late night, my much-awaited baby was born safely. Exhausted, I fell asleep quickly after the birth. The next morning, a nurse came to my room first thing to tell me that Scott had come. Apparently, he had arrived right after the birth, but seeing how deeply I was sleeping, the nurse kindly sent him away. Honestly, I felt I never needed to see him again. But when he entered the room, looking tired, I couldn't help but ask him what happened. The person who picked me up and took me to the hospital was Misty, an older lady in the neighborhood with whom I was always friendly. She had been like a mother to me, caring for me like her own daughter since I was newly married and insecure. When she asked about Scott in the car, I told her he was taking Evelyn to her hobby class, and she got angry as if it were her own matter. Little did I know that this would end up cornering Scott. After dropping me off, Misty spread the story throughout the neighborhood. Being sociable and always chatting with friends, her influence was significant, and her friends seemed to have confronted Scott en masse. The trouble that he wanted help with was apparently this situation. With that, a huge commotion had formed around our house with many people gathering. As panicked as he was, seeking my help in that situation was clearly a lack of intelligence. I hadn't heard from Evelyn at all, and my mind was already made up. I'm sorry, but can you leave? I'm not feeling well, and my parents are about to arrive.
Do our parents know about this? I want to apologize. Can I stay?
He spoke in a pitiful, muttering voice. What are you saying? I don't care about your apologies. I'm busy, so please leave. Don't say that. Where's the baby? I just want to see her and then I'll go. Just leave. There are other pregnant women here, so get out. I replied coldly and, as he still stood there, I turned my back, lay down, and covered myself with a blanket. Hey, I'm sorry. Can you call Mommy for me? I want to send her a picture of the baby. Can I call a nurse? Unbelievably, Scott reached out and shook me, just as I was about to lose my patience and push him away. What are you doing? Don't touch her. My parents entered the room. My mother rushed to my side and pushed him away. How dare you shake someone who just gave birth? And to show up without considering the situation. I'm disappointed in you. Get out now. Her fierceness, which I had never seen before, overwhelmed Scott, and he finally left the room. My father followed him, likely giving Scott a thorough scolding. During my hospital stay, I refused to see him and took the baby back to my parents' house after being discharged. Concerned about him doing something, I initiated the divorce over the phone without meeting him. I told him about the divorce papers to be mailed and the compensation claim, ignoring any objections from him. The compensation was for the scrapes and bruises I got when he forcefully made me get out of the car. He tried to make excuses, but I silenced him by mentioning the testimony of Misty and her husband and the photos of the injuries taken that day. The lawyer said the costs for his malicious actions towards a pregnant woman would be significant. While I was busy with the baby, Evelyn barged into my parents' house once. The rumor spread by Misty persisted, and the neighbor's gaze was cold. She blamed everything on me for not respecting her and her son, but my strict father handled it all. Both Evelyn and Scott were dealt with by my father, making me think it should have been this way from the start. But he said, the head of the family doesn't always stand out in the open. He was strangely trying to be cool about it. When I became accustomed to parenting, I invited Misty to my parents' house and introduced her. She quickly became friends with my mother, as they were of the same generation, and we all agreed to keep in touch. During that visit, Misty shared a story she had heard from a friend who works part-time at my ex-husband's company. Her friend, like Misty, loves gossip and apparently let slip the story of Scott to others. This quickly spread and was exaggerated, leading to a decline in his reputation. The contrast between his portrayal as a dedicated new father and the reality had a significant impact, and he resigned from his job, facing cold treatment from his bosses and colleagues. Now in his late 30s, jobless and without qualifications, he became a recluse, living off Evelyn's pension and savings, fearful of the neighbor's judgment. Years later, out of the blue, I received another call from him. "Hey, where are you? I'm in front of your parents' house, but nobody's inside." His first words were curt, so I responded similarly. "Can't you understand? We've moved." "What do you want?" "Moved? Did you use the compensation money I gave you to enjoy yourself? Come back right now, let's start over. Mommy wants to see you too." Your words make no sense. Why would I benefit from going back to you? Still talking about mommy after all this time? I don't want to hear anything from you, so don't call me again. I hung up without waiting for a reply, and my phone kept lighting up for a while. After finally setting up call blocking, I started receiving messages from him, asking for reconciliation. I read them just in case, but they were all nonsensical, saying things like, "Don't you feel sorry for the child not having a father? It's ungrateful not to let mommy see you after all she's done for you." So, I deleted all the messages and changed my email address. Although what happened was awful, it allowed me to proceed with the divorce advantageously and impose sanctions on him. Having such a worthless person in our lives would be worse for my child. Thinking so, I've been enjoying a relaxed parenting life, supported by my parents, who have become wonderful grandparents. I'm sorry, but you can't make a withdrawal. What? It seems there's only about $1 in your bank account. Wait, there's got to be a mistake. How did it come to this? I was trying to withdraw money from my bank account for my son, Mike's tuition fees. Then I received a call from the credit card company. "Hello? We're seeing a charge of $30,000 here." "What?" I exclaimed louder than before. Other customers in the vicinity turned to look, wondering what was going on. "Ma'am, can you give me a moment? I need to check something." I had a suspicion. After hanging up, I called someone else. "Did you use my credit card?" "Yeah, about that. My parents wanted a new car, so I bought it for them in full." My husband Dylan, unapologetically laughing over the phone. "All the savings for Mike's education. Do you even realize what that money was for? Come on, don't make such a fuss. It's not like it was for anything important." Hearing those words, something inside me broke. You better be responsible for your own words. What? It's your fault for leaving your credit card around like that. Don't joke. Even if it's for your parents, you can't just recklessly spend like that. You have no right to tell me that.
Realizing arguing was futile, I decided on a final course of action.
Fine. Hey, wait a sec.
I hung up and immediately called the police. Dylan had to face the consequences. There was no way I could forgive him. I'm Emily, 45 years old, working in sales at a cosmetics company. My family consists of my husband Dylan and our 18-year-old son Mike. Our relationship started through work and evolved from there.
Emily, do you plan to get married in the future? What? Where has this come from?
I was just thinking, since you're so beautiful. If we're talking about looks, Dylan, you're quite handsome yourself. Oh, come on. We were both 26, thinking about marriage. Such conversations became frequent, and before we knew it, we were dating. A year later, we got married. Dylan wanted me to be a housewife after marriage, but I wanted to continue working.
Since I'm going to keep working, how about we just merge our bank accounts? That might get confusing. Let's keep them separate. Really?
Well, I'll be the breadwinner, paying rent and groceries. You can handle the savings.
Okay then.
Living together revealed aspects of Dylan I hadn't noticed before. Discussing it with friends, they said it's often the case, which somewhat reassured me. Things were going well after that, so I didn't say anything too strongly to Dylan. Things went on like this until Mike was born a year into our marriage.
We really need to cut back on unnecessary expenses now that we have a child.
I was on maternity leave and decided to talk to Dylan when he got back from work. I thought that if I talked to him, he would understand.
You think I'm wasting money? I should be able to spend as I like sometimes. Of course, but my worry is that you're overspending.
Ugh. Dylan sighed, looking annoyed. I was worried if we were okay, being this way so early in our marriage. But the problem didn't solve itself as time went by. And the issues weren't just with Dylan.
My parents are coming over to visit soon. What? Why didn't you tell me earlier? Sorry, I totally forgot.
This was just the beginning. I was constantly being put in difficult situations by Dylan and my in-laws. And then, the following Saturday, my in-laws arrived.
Hello, Emily.
Long time no see. Please come in. Don't mind if I do. At first glance, the parents-in-law seemed quite caring, and to others, there seemed to be no issues. However, perhaps more like a parent and child, they were lax about managing money.
How about we go shopping today, since it's a special occasion?
Shopping?
Yes. There's something I've been wanting for a long time.
But since Mike was in a bad mood and wouldn't stop crying no matter what, I ended up staying home.
All right, I'm counting on you to house sit.
With that, Dylan left with the parents-in-law. When they returned about 2 hours later, I was surprised to see them.
What's with all those bags in your hands? Oh, these? Yeah, I guess I bought too much.
Moreover, the bags were printed with logos of famous brands.
We're back. Sorry for making you house sit. Oh, no, it's okay.
Mother-in-law Rebecca was also carrying bags similar to Dylan's. Then, sitting on the sofa, she started spreading out her purchases as if to show them off to me. I didn't own that much myself. Moreover, since getting married, I've been trying to save money, keeping the future in mind.
Thank you for today. I can't believe you bought me so much.
It's nothing to worry about. It's just filial piety. Plus, I got a lot too. Watching this exchange was almost headache-inducing.
Oh, right. This is for Mike.
Saying this, Dylan pulled out a piece of baby clothing from a brand.
We had to make you house sit, after all.
Father-in-law Bert said with a laugh. I had hoped they might have bought something for me too, but there was nothing, and Dylan and his parents seemed satisfied looking at their own things. The day ended with a family dinner and we said goodbyes, but there was another chance to meet the in-laws at a family gathering. Welcome. Thank you for having us today. Even I, who wasn't much interested in brands, could tell Rebecca was dressed head to toe in brand name clothes. "You always seem so plain." This was said while we were drinking coffee in the living room. From the moment she arrived, Rebecca had been looking at me, and this was why.
"I've been meaning to say this, but you need to take care of your appearance more."
Then Dylan joined the conversation.
"What are you talking about?"
About Emily being plain.
"Oh, that. Yeah, I've been meaning to say same."
The reason for my plain appearance was because I had more important things to worry about than my own looks. Dylan freely spent money, but I was the one covering the costs from our savings. He didn't realize that our current lifestyle was thanks to that. During my 2-day stay at my in-laws, I had to put up with Rebecca's sarcasm the whole entire time. And upon returning home, Dylan started it with my appearance again.
"Like Mom said at home earlier, you should take more care of your appearance. It's embarrassing for me too."
Unable to bear it any longer, I vented all my pent-up frustrations.
"If you're embarrassed, then think a bit more about how you spend money. I've been saying this for a long time. Are we going to have that talk again? I'm tired of hearing it." "Tired of hearing it? With Mike growing older, are you planning to keep living like this? Life is going on just fine, isn't it?"
Dylan laughed and headed to the bedroom. Life went on like this, and before we knew it, Mike had become a junior in high school. Then, one summer afternoon, Dylan came up to me.
"I have something I want to discuss."
Dylan wanting to discuss something was a bad omen. And as expected, my fears were confirmed.
"A discussion? Sort out your money issues yourself."
"Haven't said anything yet, have I? Can you pay for some living expenses instead?" Had Dylan not listened to me at all? I was so astounded I didn't want to talk anymore.
"By the way, what are you short on?" "What I'm short on? Everything." "Everything? It hasn't even been a week since payday. Just help me out, okay?"
Dylan didn't seem to feel any remorse towards me. Reluctantly, I convinced myself it was necessary for our livelihood.
"This is the last time, okay?"
"Yeah." Even though we were still talking, Dylan was looking at his mobile phone, seemingly bored. And that wasn't all.
"I'm going out for a bit." "Wait. Where are you going?" "Don't need to tell you. I'll be back by night."
And then Dylan left the house. I was left alone in the living room, stunned. Honestly, I've considered divorce more than once or twice. But I didn't because of Mike. While I was thinking about this, Mike came.
"Huh? Where's Dad?"
"He just went out."
"Maybe he's gone to buy something again?" "You think so too?"
Whenever Dylan went out alone without saying where he was going, he invariably ended up buying unnecessary things. As I sighed, Mike made a suggestion.
"Why don't you just let it go?" "What?"
"I've been watching all this time, and it's clearly too much."
"But you're still here. I can't do something so irresponsible." "That's why I'm saying, once I graduate from college, I'll leave this house to work. Then, Mom, you can be free to do what you want."
"Thank you." For Mike, who had been watching Dylan's reckless behavior, it must have been too much to tolerate. Mike's words were a relief to me. He was my son and we were a team. Dylan returned before dinner, as expected, with luxury items. If there was money to buy such things, it should be used for living expenses. I was too tired to even complain to Dylan. No matter what I said, he wouldn't listen and would do as he pleased. Sometime after I had covered Dylan's expenses.
"Here. What's this?" "This is to cover what you paid for me the other day."
Saying that, Dylan handed me an envelope. Inside, there was money.
"Oh, thank you."
I hadn't expected him to repay me so soon. When I checked the amount, it was $1,000. It wasn't enough to cover what I paid, but I still felt a little happy. But that brief joy soon turned into a nightmare.
"All right, I'm taking this back." "Hey, what are you doing?"
Dylan snatched the envelope back from me and put it in his pocket.
I did pay you back, right?
I'll need it for tomorrow.
I don't understand what you're doing.
I was confused about what was happening. While I was in panic, Dylan continued.
Why are you surprised?
Look. Then Dylan handed me the envelope again, only to take it back. He repeated this a few times.
So, now I've paid back everything I owe you.
I had no energy left to argue back. It was like a child's way of pretending everything was settled.
If that's what you think, I won't lend you money again. Why does it come to that? I paid you back, didn't I? Forget it.
From that day, I grew to dislike even talking to Dylan. Whenever he asked for something, it was always about money. Even more troublesome were the in-laws. I thought they had been quiet lately, but then suddenly they contacted me.
We haven't received this month's allowance.
What? Allowance? I haven't heard anything about it.
That can't be. Dylan said you would start paying from this month.
It's too sudden, I can't.
We're in trouble too. We have payments to make. It's your problem, so sort it out. I need it by the day after tomorrow. Wait a minute, Rebecca.
She said what she wanted to say and just hung up. I was constantly troubled by this family. Just thinking about it gave me a headache. That night, I asked Dylan what was going on.
Rebecca called, but what's this about an allowance?
They seemed a bit troubled, so I've been sending them money for a while.
But why should I pay? I haven't heard anything about it.
Oh, did I forget to mention?
And you even told Rebecca that I would be making the deposit.
Then just send the allowance. However, I decided not to send the allowance. Nor did I contact the in-laws, ignoring whatever they said. Mike's exams were approaching, and I couldn't afford to focus on such things. Time passed, and Mike got accepted to his first choice of college.
Congratulations! You've been working hard for this.
The real challenge starts now.
Say something to him.
Well done. That was the only thing Dylan said without even looking at Mike.
Wait a minute.
I tried to say something to Dylan, but Mike stopped me. I guess Mike didn't have much expectation from Dylan either. Then trouble came when I went to the bank to pay Mike's tuition. When my number was called and I approached the counter, an unexpected incident occurred. I'm sorry, but you cannot make a withdrawal.
What?
It seems there is only $1 in your bank account.
Wait, there's got to be a mistake.
How did it come to this? I was just trying to withdraw money from the bank account for Mike's tuition payment. Then, a call came from the credit card company. Hello? We have noticed some unfamiliar usage on your credit card. Do you have any idea about this?
That can't be right. It has to be a mistake.
We have a record of the usage. There's a $30,000 charge on your account.
What?
I exclaimed louder than before. Other customers in the bank turned to look at me. Ma'am?
Sorry, could you give me a moment? I need to check something.
Understood. I had one suspicion in mind. I hung up and called someone.
Where are you now?
At home.
Why are you so panicky? Did you use my credit card?
There was a brief silence. Yeah, that. My parents wanted a new car, so I bought it for them in one go. Dylan laughed over the phone, without any sign of remorse. All the money I had saved for Mike's education.
Do you even realize what that money was for?
Come on, don't make such a fuss. It couldn't have been for anything important. Hearing those words, something inside me crumbled.
You better be responsible for your own words. What? Responsible? It's your fault for leaving your credit card out. Don't joke around. Even if it's for your parents, do you realize how stupid this is? I don't need to be lectured by you.
I realized it was futile to argue with Dylan. I decided to take the final step.
Fine then. Hey, wait.
I hung up the phone immediately and then contacted the police. Dylan would have to face the consequences. No matter what, I couldn't forgive this. When I got back home, I confronted Dylan.
You better pay back every penny you used without permission.
Sorry, I'm a bit busy right now.
What?
Dylan was getting ready to leave.
I told you I bought a car, right? They're treating me to dinner today. Is this really the time for that? We're not done talking yet. Then we can talk when I get back.
I'll be late if I stay now. Ignoring my attempts to stop him, Dylan was about to leave when I told him about notifying the police.
I just called the police.
He stopped in his tracks.
What did you say? Did I hear something about the police? It's not your imagination. What the hell did you do? It's obvious, isn't it? You used my credit card without permission. Taking someone's money like that is theft. Your money is mine too. I just used it. And now you're calling the police. What are you thinking? Anyways, pay back the full amount. And make sure you apologize to Mike too. Apologize? Why? Mike has nothing to do with this.
I sighed. Using the money for his own desires was just unbelievable.
That money you used was saved for Mike's entrance fees and tuition. But thanks to you, we can't even pay that now. Why didn't you tell me sooner? How could I expect you to do something this foolish?
Then he started blaming me.
Not realizing someone used your credit card, aren't you the foolish one?
My anger was rising.
Also, you've always looked down on me, haven't you? That's you. Don't you see me as anything more than a wallet?
What? You've become such a troublesome woman. I was about to utter the word divorce when Mike, who had been out, returned.
What are you doing?
Mike.
Another fight?
Give it a rest. His words were not directed at me, but at Dylan.
What's up? You got a complaint against me too?
It's not a complaint, it's a warning. If you keep this up, you'll regret it eventually.
Regret? You've become quite bold in talking back to Dad, haven't you?
Dylan even started snapping at Mike. I regretted ever marrying such a person.
Oh, right, I almost forgot to tell you, I'm going on a trip in a week. How can you be so selfish? I thought about taking you guys along, but changed my mind. Just stay home and behave.
Dylan laughed at us mockingly and left to buy things for his trip. Left behind, we looked at each other. I'm sorry, Mike. Your tuition. So that's why you were fighting. Now I couldn't even send him to college. Even though it was Dylan's fault, I wouldn't have been surprised if Mike blamed me. But instead of blaming, Mike was concerned about me.
It's not your fault, Mom. Dad's the one to blame. And it's not like I can never go to college.
I felt grateful to Mike for saying that, but was also filled with guilt. I decided I had to get revenge on Dylan to the end.
I need your help with something. Of course. I'm on your side, Mom.
So, we planned our strategy before Dylan returned. And then, in the morning a week later.
See ya. I'll be back the day after tomorrow.
I didn't even respond. What's with you?
At least say something. Oh, and I paid for this trip with your credit card.
Dylan left in a good mood. I wasn't even surprised to hear that.
Is he gone? Gone. Shall we start then? Yes, let's.
We packed up everything except Dylan's belongings. During this week, we had found a place to move to. We decided to move on the day Dylan went on his trip.
We're finally done. It took quite some time. Just need to get the movers now.
Soon the movers came. We left a note in the room and headed to the new apartment. I also decided to cancel the lease on the current apartment. I was the one who had originally signed the lease. Thus, a new life with Mike began.
I wonder what he'll think when he gets back. He'll probably panic. But whatever happens, I don't care.
Serves him right. The day Dylan was supposed to return from his trip arrived. Sure enough, there was a barrage of calls from Dylan. Curious about his reaction, I answered the phone.
Emily! Where are you?
I don't think I need to tell you that.
Stop joking around.
I think you're the one who's joking. Did you check the table?
The divorce papers?
Yes, those. My name is already on them.
Fine. Then we'll get divorced.
With that, Dylan hung up. The next day, Dylan sent a photo of the signed divorce papers. I felt relieved, but still had things to do. I immediately contacted a lawyer to get back the money he had used without permission. About a month later.
What do you mean move out?
A panicked call from Dylan came early in the morning. It means just that. I signed the lease, after all. I can do whatever I want with it, right?
I can't just accept that. Come back here now.
That's impossible. We're divorced, remember? I thought it was time to say everything I wanted to Dylan.
Also, I'm getting the money you used back through my lawyer. You did what?
Yes. I don't need to hold back anymore. So, I'll do as I please.
Who do you think allowed you to live like this? I certainly don't think it was thanks to you.
Even over the phone, I could tell Dylan was furious. But his anger couldn't change the reality. Just get out of that house quickly. It's not yours anymore.
You'll regret this.
He hung up, but I wasn't bothered. In fact, I laughed out loud. What happened? Sorry. That was him just now. And what did he say? Of course, he was angry. Told me that I'd regret this. What's that supposed to mean?
It's funny, isn't it?
After that, Dylan, unable to do anything, had to leave the house. He truly got what he deserved. Apparently, Dylan moved back to his parents' house, but that was a mistake. Dylan's help was far from over. The next day after Dylan contacted me, the lawyer informed me that we could formally recover the money. It looked like we could also claim compensation for all the trouble he had caused.
How dare you do this to us?
Huh? The call from Rebecca was full of complaints.
Thanks to you, we're in trouble. We can't make our payments now. How are you going to fix this?
That's unfortunate. But it's no longer my problem, and you'll have to resolve it on your end.
You should pay in my place since it's your fault. Absolutely not. If you had any gratitude for the help we gave you, you should repay that kindness. I don't feel I owe you anything, so I'm fine. Goodbye.
This time, I was the one to hang up. It was a truly liberating moment. This outcome should have been easy to predict. A family all lax about money was bound to collapse eventually. Blinded by immediate desires, they failed to see the reality of their situation.
We finally got our money back.
Yes, but we couldn't make the college payment in time.
It's okay. I'll try again next year.
Mike was incredibly positive. Seeing him like that lifted my spirits. Later, I heard that Dylan and his family, unable to pay their debts, filed for bankruptcy. They ended up losing their house and were left wandering with no assets. I don't even know where they live now. They filed for bankruptcy. Seems like it. It's their own responsibility.
Well, it's not our concern anymore.
Dylan was also interviewed by the police but was just questioned. The police couldn't intervene further. However, this incident reached his workplace, and Dylan was apparently fired. He'll probably regret this for the rest of his life. I'm determined to keep moving forward with Mike, working together as a team.
You're the low-educated, incompetent employee which Mom told me about, huh?
Suddenly, I was tasked with conducting an interview. My interviewee was Catherine, a daughter of a director who was scheming nepotism. However, she started laughing loudly, crossed her legs, and began to look down on me, bringing the interview to the verge of collapse. I couldn't believe the company was considering hiring someone like her. Later, when the director heard my report, he began to tremble. I'm 32 years old. After graduating from college and switching jobs once, I'm now working steadily at my current company. I usually work in the HR, and my boss, Jacqueline, the director, is someone I deeply respect. Because she is always cheerful and highly trusted by everyone around her. Though I respected the director, I often felt something was off. But I couldn't figure out what it was and continued to work with her for 5 years. Finally, I grasped what that feeling was about. It became clear when the director suddenly had to step away, and I was asked to interview her daughter as a stand-in. This led to an unbelievable fate for both the director and her daughter. Sorry to ask, but could you interview my daughter? Don't feel pressured just because she's my daughter, just treat her like usual. Understood. Leave it to me. She must be excellent, being your daughter. Thanks. I have to go now. Good luck. One day, I was suddenly asked to conduct an interview. The director had an unfortunate schedule change with a client and had to rush to a meeting room with the chief. But today was also the day her daughter was coming for an interview, so she asked me and my colleague Nancy to take over. Since we had no particular plans, so we happily agreed and saw the director off. Since the interview wasn't until the afternoon, we continued our usual work until then. I thought it would just be a formal interview, considering she was the director's daughter. After joining the company, the director's daughter was going to work as my colleague. Apparently, someone in our department was transferring next year, and the director recommended her daughter to fill the vacancy. While I was looking forward to it and working, someone tapped my shoulder. I turned around to find Isabel, the chairman's daughter, standing there. Isabel is quiet but a vital member who always works earnestly. I only found out Isabel was the chairman's daughter recently, during the first drinking party in a long time where the director shared the story. Isabel wasn't at that gathering, but later, when I checked in with her, it turned out to be true. It's a fact known to those in positions above the director, but not to the general employees. Isabel kept it hidden because she didn't want everyone to know. After hearing this, I apologized. Isabel smiled, forgave me, and after some small talk, we became a bit closer. About this document. Do you have questions? I'll help if I can. Thank you. Isabel smiled gently. The reason why I could see such a smile, because we had talked and gotten a little closer. Until then, Isabel had been someone who worked methodically, seldom interacting with other employees. Since she didn't exhibit any notable problem behaviors, no one in the department really said much. Now that I had talked to her and become a bit friendlier, I started approaching her, but until then, since there was no interaction outside of work, I hadn't paid her much attention. I'm sure most others felt the same way. Besides, Isabel herself probably liked being alone. At that time, that was all I understood about her. But later, I came to know that Isabel was dealing with some troubles. When I heard about them, I was shocked and couldn't believe it. Hi, I'm Catherine. Thank you for having me today. The afternoon passed, and it was time for the interview. As the interviewer, I was waiting in the interview room with my colleague for the director's daughter. She arrived on time, as scheduled. Her educational background was impeccable, with active participation in volunteer work and cultural exchanges. She had also studied abroad, and her resume mentioned proficiency in German. Please, take a seat. I said that, guiding Catherine to the chair in front of me. Catherine had frozen for a bit after entering, then looked uneasy, as if she wanted to ask something. She seemed confused not to see her mother among the interviewers. I explained that the director had urgent business and that my colleague and I had taken over the interview. The director isn't here, but please relax and answer the questions. They aren't too difficult. When I said this, Catherine furrowed her brows and looked at me. She sat down, her face tensing with nervousness. I kept my tone calm and asked the questions formally. However, the interview didn't go as I expected. Catherine gave careless responses and didn't answer even simple questions. I didn't show it, but I was very surprised inside. I had checked her resume and imagined her to be a competent person, so the contrast was startling. "Are you nervous?" Concerned, I asked this, to which Catherine looked at me with her eyes narrowed. I hope you don't mind me asking, but are you really standing in for my mother? Wouldn't the person next to you be more competent?" "Excuse me?" I was taken aback by her unexpected words. As I wondered about her intention, Catherine slouched back, sneering. "Like, is this interview even necessary? My mom is a director, you know? I wasn't told I'd have to spend so much time on this. I have plans later." Her attitude left me speechless. What was she talking about? Seeing me silent, Catherine burst out laughing. "Didn't you know? It's as if I'm already hired. Unlike you, I'm competent. Please watch your language. We are in the middle of an interview. I don't care what you think, but please answer our questions properly." When I retorted irritably, Catherine closed her mouth in displeasure. I had high hopes knowing she was the director's daughter, but now I couldn't deny feeling disappointed. However, since she said she is joining the company, I tried to persuade her. But it seemed nothing got through to Catherine. She absent-mindedly fiddled with her nails, not even trying to make eye contact. "It's kind of funny how desperate you are. I do want a job, but I'm not exactly enthusiastic. I just need enough money to live. Even so, working comes with responsibilities, right? You understand that, having come for the interview? I heard this company has a good work-life balance. It is impossible for someone as incompetent as you to convince me. Do you get it?" Catherine's flippant attitude during the interview left me with an indescribable feeling. Indeed, many people in the company have a similar stance as her. But even they think proactively and act responsibly. I just wanted her to understand that, but Catherine dismissed it as something only enthusiastic employees do, arguing that it makes no difference in terms of evaluation, so it's pointless. I didn't want to work with someone like her. My colleague, perhaps feeling the same, shook their head in displeasure. "If you understand, can you hurry up and end the interview? I know about you, you know." Catherine said this with a sly smile. I didn't understand what she meant, but for some reason, Catherine looked triumphant. "Mom said we don't need people like you in this company." Catherine said this, crossing her arms and puffing out her chest. Hearing her words, I couldn't help but tense up and look at her. Catherine seemed self-assured, sneering at me with a side glance. Then she began to act arrogantly. "I could interview you if you want. I don't understand what you're saying." Frustrated, I responded, and Catherine provoked me, saying if I'm not incompetent, I should be able to answer her questions. "Are you refusing because you can't answer?" Even when I disagreed, Catherine wouldn't listen. Since she persistently said I should be able to answer otherwise, I finally asked what she wanted to know. With a malicious smile, Catherine started prying into my educational background. What I did as a student, and whether I've made any achievements in the current company. When I answered honestly, she laughed it off and became even more arrogant. Eventually, she crossed her legs and laughed loudly, claiming that I would soon be her subordinate. When I asked what she meant, Catherine turned to me as if she were glad that I asked that question. "I am planning to take over Mom's position. I'm the director's daughter, and she said she'd bring me in. So it's like I'm being hired for her succession, right?" "Huh? Even if you join the company, you can't just become a director so easily. You have to learn the job first, right? That'll be easy. Mom acknowledges my ability. I'm sure I can learn the job in a year, right? Then, I will become a manager in the second year, and a director in the third year. I'm talented, so maybe I won't even need a full year to learn the job." I was increasingly astounded. It was a natural reaction, considering she was missing the steps to become a manager. My colleague, too, looked dismayed and was no longer interested in conducting a proper interview. We should better be wrapping up this troublesome interview quickly. Then, we should report this to the director, suggesting she reconsider hiring her daughter. "I understood your career plan. However, I won't be your subordinate.
Please revisit our company's website and check the career plans of your seniors. You'll realize your plan is unrealistic.
I said that, trying to end the interview. I never imagined I'd have to lecture someone like this during an interview. Suppressing a sigh, I sent Catherine a silent look, signaling her to leave. But Catherine, seemingly unsatisfied.
Why?
She asked.
There's nothing more to answer.
After I said that, Catherine stood up abruptly. The chair she had been sitting in toppled backward with a clatter. Ignoring that, Catherine approached me and leaned on the desk in front of me.
Why? Isn't it natural I'll be your boss? I ask you, why would I become your subordinate? Because you're the low-educated, incompetent employee Mom told me about.
I was stunned by her words. Catherine, looking down on me, talked about what her mother had said. I was astounded to hear the content of her story. After venting everything, Catherine left the interview room, seemingly satisfied. Left behind, I exchanged glances with my subordinate next to me, mentioning the need to verify the truth of her story with the director.
We need to discuss this in our interview report this evening.
In the evening, I approached the director, who had returned to our department looking a bit tired from a long meeting. The director, though tired, urged me to continue. I revealed the outrageous behavior of the director's daughter at the interview. The director, wide-eyed and deeply shocked, listened to my words.
My child behaved like that. I know it's hard to believe, but it's the truth. Also, there was something else she mentioned that concerned me.
What is it? With a tense face, I told the director everything Catherine had said. The director became even more confused, turning red with anger, and raised her voice. Hearing her, people around the floor started staring at us. Yet, I calmly affirmed the facts.
Jacqueline, did you tell your daughter I'm a low-educated, incompetent employee? If that's true, I'll have to respond accordingly.
Are you threatening me?
No, not at all. I just have personal concerns and wanted to verify the facts.
Hearing this, the director looked confused.
I don't know what my daughter said, but do as you like.
The director, seemingly unable to contain her anger, made a dismissing gesture with her hand. My perception of the director changed significantly that day. Later, the director called me in. I also had things to discuss after completing my fact-checking, so I responded to her call. The meeting was in a conference room. I opened the door and greeted as I entered. Inside, the director was waiting for me, pale and trembling.
You've done something unnecessary, haven't you?
What do you mean?
Don't play dumb.
The director approached me as I entered the room, glaring at me fiercely. Despite her menacing look, I started recording on my mobile phone in my pocket. The director was still pale, showing signs of distress.
Yesterday, you talked about fact-checking, but what exactly did you verify and with whom? Because of you, I was called in by the vice presidents this morning, and... So, were you told to consider a department transfer and resign from your position? So, it was you. Confess what you did.
Confronted with her accusations, I honestly explained my actions from the previous day. First, I had a direct conversation with the director. I thought I was the incompetent, low-educated employee her daughter mentioned at the interview, but as we talked, unfamiliar facts emerged. The employee who the director's daughter often heard about was someone the director always burdened with work, leading to almost daily overtime. I was shocked as I had no memory of such treatment, initially thinking the director's daughter was lying. However, seeing my colleague's stiffened face after hearing the story confirmed its veracity.
Actually, there's one person in the department who has a lot of overtime.
Really? Who is it?
Yes. I manage the overtime records on a computer, and I always thought something was odd.
I was unaware my colleague was doing this and was just impressed. My own overtime was within the regulations, so I wasn't the person mentioned in the story. But the revelation of who was doing the excessive overtime was a shock. It's Isabel. I was stunned. There was no indication of this, but I decided to confirm it with Isabel herself, accompanied by my colleague. Hearing our questions, Isabel initially tried to evade but eventually broke down, crying about the work dumped on her by the director and the difficulties she faced when left out of communication. I realized I didn't notice, or perhaps didn't want to notice. I should have been aware sooner. Isabel had been struggling alone all this time. Her lack of interaction was to avoid conflict with the director, who often caused trouble when she spoke with others. Angered by these underhanded tactics, I confronted the director directly, but she denied everything, which prompted me to take the next step. That night, I consulted with the CEO and chairman. Although I was only a manager, I was actually favored by the CEO and chairman, having been headhunted to this company. I was quite close to them, often invited to dinner meetings. I had a dinner appointment with the CEO and chairman, where I objectively discussed Isabel and the director's actions, expressing my concerns. The CEOs listened calmly and promised to investigate. But I couldn't wait. When I expressed concern to the chairman about his granddaughter, he questioned how I knew about Isabel, but admitted their relationship after I explained our recent closeness. The CEO, though not related to Isabel by blood, was the one who had invited her to the company. Taking responsibility, the CEO deeply reflected and offered some advice, which brought me here today.
Jacqueline, did you really do such things to Isabel?
When I asked this, the director, initially flustered, finally admitted her actions as I persisted.
At first, I didn't. But then, thinking she might be the next CEO as a chairman's granddaughter, I panicked. Were you aiming for the CEO position, Jacqueline?
Yes, is that so wrong?
I've devoted myself to this company for that. I thought I finally became a director and next would be the CEO. I can't let her get in my way.
Hearing the director's ambition, I was taken aback. But it seemed she had greatly erred in her methods. Furthermore, if she had truly achieved significant accomplishments, the CEO would have recognized her. The director seemed defiant. As she started to slander Isabel, I interrupted her unbearable words to continue.
I understand your point, Jacqueline. You understand. So, this time. But you're wrong. You pushed Isabel too hard. Please take responsibility for that.
As I firmly said this, the conference room door opened. There stood Isabel, flanked by the CEO and chairman. The director gasped at the sight.
Are you trying to deceive me? No, I brought Isabel here because I wanted you to apologize to her.
As I said this, the director clenched her back teeth in frustration and glared at me.
If that's your intention, then I won't hold back anymore. Be prepared.
The director, glaring, positioned herself in front of Isabel. She then turned her fierce gaze on Isabel and appealed to the CEO and chairman standing beside her.
Please listen to me. You are being deceived. These two conspired to overthrow me.
The director, with clenched fists and a stern face, made her accusation strongly. The CEO and chairman, displeased by the director's words, watched as she fabricated a story about how we pinned our mistakes on her.
I didn't do such a thing. This all started when I investigated what your daughter said during the interview.
You admitted it, didn't you? Please take the responsibility.
No. I only admitted because I was forced into a corner. Where's the proof my daughter said those things? We have the interview recorded. I'll ask Nancy to bring it right now. Please wait a moment.
I immediately called my colleague, who quickly brought the interview recording to the conference room. We projected the interview footage, the report, and Isabel's overtime data with the room's projector, showing them to the CEO and chairman. Still, the director didn't give up. She accused me of threatening her daughter during the interview to coerce damaging testimony, and claimed I manipulated Isabel's overtime data using my colleague.
I was deceived. This woman has been carrying out a meticulous plan. I realized it too late.
The director even began to fake cry poorly. Then she called Catherine, put it on speaker, and asked if I had threatened her during the interview. Catherine, maintaining her usual tone but becoming angry upon hearing my name, said the interview was terrible,
My daughter says this. Do you still believe her? Are you saying I bullied and cornered Isabel? Just because she's your cute granddaughter, you're playing favorites? That's absurd.
The chairman and others looked displeased at her words. I decided to present my final piece of evidence. I have an audio recording of you admitting what you did to Isabel. It's from our conversation before Isabel and the others arrived. Please give up and admit it. And apologize to Isabel. I played the audio of our earlier conversation from my mobile phone. Hearing her own words and realizing I had recorded the conversation, the director clenched her back teeth in frustration. This is a clear violation of compliance. The director had no further rebuttals. The CEO and chairman then informed her that a meeting would be held to discuss her future sanctions and advised her to prepare any counterarguments by then. Hearing this, the director slumped in her seat with a look of despair on her face. Subsequently, the director was stripped of her position. Her salary was reduced, and she was transferred to a small, regional department. It's unlikely she will ever return to a director's role, regardless of her future achievements. Naturally, Catherine's job offer was also revoked. Catherine, outraged that she was treated this way because of her mother, stormed into the company but was quickly restrained by security and taken away. According to a rumor, the director, who was already divorced, recently disowned her daughter and is now living alone in an apartment near her new department. I received thanks from Isabel. Furthermore, I was promoted from manager to director and am now working as the director of human resources. While I was genuinely happy about the promotion, I also regretted not realizing the situation sooner. Still, Isabel is strong. Since the director's departure, she seems to have regained her spirits over time. Seeing this brought me relief. I enjoy my work at this company. I hope that one day Isabel will come to feel the same way.
I can't stand anything about you anymore. What do you mean? Leave. I want to live with just my family. It turns out my in-laws have decided to kick me out. My husband Daniel even prepared divorce papers. I filled out my part. Please sign it quickly. This was the opportunity I'd been waiting for. I took the papers and signed them immediately. My name is Olivia, a 34-year-old housewife. Daniel and I have been married for 5 years. We never had children and have been living together, just the two of us. After graduating college, Daniel took a job at a regular corporation. But it turned out to be a real grind, a sweatshop even. He was working from early in the morning to late at night, both physically and mentally drained. I started looking for something I could do from home to help out. At first, I found part-time data entry jobs, earning a bit on the side. Then I taught myself video production and began to pick up some work, slowly building our savings. Once we had a decent nest egg, I started investing. I educated myself, started practical investing, and kept building up experience. I also saved money through my video production work. After several years of this, I became pretty successful at it. What I was doing was FX trading. It was risky, but given that I was always in front of a computer screen for my remote work, it seemed to fit me. I suggested to Daniel that I could contribute to the rent so he wouldn't have to push himself so hard. At first, he looked at me skeptically. The household is running because I'm working, isn't it? You're probably just making pocket money with your video stuff, right? Actually, I've been earning quite a bit, and I have significant earnings from my investments too. What? So you don't have to stick with that awful job. You can find something else. Really? Yes, thank you for working so hard up till now. Daniel was thrilled and later told me excitedly, I've submitted my resignation. I hope this cheers up Daniel and that our relationship can grow even stronger. But things with Daniel took an unexpected turn. Hey, can we live with my mom and dad? What? Hold on, you mean go live in your parents' house? Even if you switch jobs, my income is enough for both of us to live on, you know? That's why I don't see the need to move in with your parents. No, that's not it. We're going to rent a new apartment in a high-rise building and live there together. What? Check this out. Daniel showed me a flyer for a recently constructed high-rise apartment building. You're seriously thinking of living here? Finally, I can do something nice for my parents. Whoa, hold on. The rent here is $5,000. That's too much. But you're making money from stocks, right, Olivia? We can totally afford it. Well, that's true. It wasn't an unaffordable amount. But I didn't desire such a lavish lifestyle, and I wanted to save for the future, perhaps for when we have kids. I hadn't considered living with my in-laws, Stephen and Jessica, and if we're talking about being dutiful, shouldn't it come from your own earnings? It felt like he was conveniently using me, and it bothered me a bit. Do we absolutely have to live with Jessica and the rest? What? You don't want to? They're still pretty active, right? Stephen is only 2 or 3 years from retirement. I've been working like a dog in a sweatshop and haven't been able to give them much attention, you know? Please help me out on this. Since Daniel pleaded like that, I reluctantly agreed. But this turned out to be a huge mistake in my life. Wow, what an amazing place! The view is great, and it's so clean. I'm glad Dad and Mom are happy too. My in-laws were thrilled about living in a high-rise. They were excited all day on the first day. Daniel really is something, huh? Being able to live this luxuriously means he must be earning a lot. Yeah. I nudged Daniel, who was sitting next to me. Feeling awkward, Daniel finally said, Actually, the rent for this place isn't coming from my earnings. My in-laws looked shocked and said, What? What? Daniel continued, Olivia has been making money in the stock market, and that's how we're covering the rent. You mean it's not from your income, Daniel? Olivia's stock earnings, huh? My in-laws seemed quite taken aback. Well, the truth would come out eventually, so I'm glad Daniel said something. At first, my in-laws looked guilty, as if they were walking on eggshells, which made me feel awkward too. So I told them not to worry too much and to be more relaxed around Daniel. After all, I started investing to ease the burden on Daniel, and if it helps them live more comfortably, that's fine by me. But they turned out to be incredibly selfish people. After Daniel's revelation, they became increasingly brazen. Olivia, I prefer my food a bit softer, one said. Olivia, grab me a beer. Oh, and some mayo too, said the other. I'd like a designer bag, Olivia. Can you buy me one? I could use a new set of golf clubs. They started treating me like some sort of cash cow. Look, I'm willing to handle household chores, but I can't extend financial support like that, I told them. I do want to take care of the home as much as I can, but we have to be firm about money. Otherwise, they'll just keep taking advantage. So I refused their requests one after another. They grew increasingly grumpy and started voicing their complaints to Daniel. Why is she always home? Seems suspicious that she's making that much. She must be gambling, not working. So cocky, even though the money's from gambling. She's just lucky, that's all. It seems they've been saying things like that to Daniel. Daniel, meanwhile, had switched to a job with a lower salary, but no overtime. Since he no longer had to pay rent and living expenses, all his earnings went towards whatever he wanted. He started wearing more extravagant clothes, always custom-made suits, and buying designer shoes and bags. Daniel's always loved fashion, so he seemed thrilled. Because of this, my in-laws couldn't understand why they couldn't live luxuriously as well, and started complaining to Daniel. So Daniel says to me, Why don't you buy some stuff for my parents, as a gesture of filial piety? But I couldn't agree with that. If it's about filial piety, why don't you do it? You're the one who can use his earnings however he wants right now. It's actually the perfect chance for you to show some filial piety. When I said that, Daniel made a displeased face. Probably because he couldn't argue against my point. But if he started taking care of his parents financially, he wouldn't be able to indulge himself. That's why he can't commit to it. So that's why he's been relying on me. But since I declined, Daniel has been increasingly harsh towards me lately. You're always glued to your computer, and you don't even wear makeup. What kind of woman does that? You think you don't have to care because you're always at home? You won't be a good match for me if you keep looking so sloppy. Hold on, what do you mean not a good match? Who cares about matching when we're inside the house? Women start looking worse when they stop caring. You should always try to look beautiful. Daniel started to say things that made me uncomfortable more frequently. His parents have observed this, began to complain directly to me as well. Why can't you cook better meals? You may earn money, but you're failing as a wife if you can't handle household chores. You should fulfill all your duties as a wife. Having heard that from my in-laws, I finally lost my patience and retorted. But thanks to my income, all of us, including Jessica, can live comfortably, right? I think that's what matters most. Besides, Jessica is healthy and not working, yet she doesn't do any housework, right? And didn't Stephen quit his job? What would you do if I weren't here? I don't need to be praised, but why do you have to nitpick everything? When I said that, my in-laws were red in the face, trembling and speechless. Probably because my points were too valid to refute. Then they started talking behind our backs when Daniel and I weren't around. But they spoke so loudly that I could clearly hear the three of them bad-mouthing me in the living room. What's up with that wife? She's always making fools out of us. It's infuriating. Her words last time were so condescending. Olivia has changed. She thinks she's all that just because she made some money gambling. If Olivia can make that much, we should be able to earn a lot if we start doing Forex trading, right? Exactly. If Olivia can do it, so can we. Yeah, let's start doing it right away. I couldn't believe my ears. Investing is nothing like gambling. It's not something you can just learn quickly and start making money. You'd think that Stephen and Daniel, having worked in companies, would know this. But ever since that conversation, both my in-laws and Daniel started getting increasingly confrontational towards me. At breakfast, they'd say things like, gotta check the stock prices. Need to get ahead of someone we know. And then start checking on their laptops right at the table. I started to feel like I didn't belong in this family if that's how they were going to treat me. Then, something shocking happened. One day, I went out with a friend to take a break and enjoy a favorite anime event. I decided to put work on pause and hit the town. Just then, I happened to spot Daniel. I saw him in front of a high-end store downtown. He was just coming out of the shop. Buying more designer stuff, huh? He should be investing that money instead. As I was absent-mindedly watching him, a young woman came out of the store and started getting cozy with him. I quickly hid behind a corner with my friend and took pictures with my phone. I was definitely shocked. Although things had been tense between Daniel and me, I thought he still kept the lines clear between our personal and public lives. I believed he still loved me as his wife, but that wasn't the case. Daniel was involved with another, younger woman. Something snapped inside me. I didn't want to be with him or live with his parents anymore. Starting that day, I began looking for a single-bedroom condo for myself. And I stopped doing chores and taking care of my in-laws. I questioned why I needed to do it at all and just stopped. My in-laws were furious at me. I found out Daniel was also mad at me, and one day I was suddenly summoned by my in-laws. What the heck is going on with Olivia lately? I can't stand Olivia's behavior anymore. She's so disrespectful, especially for a wife. Mom and Dad are right. Olivia's getting way too big for her boots. And then Jessica loudly chimes in. I can't stand anything about Olivia. Excuse me? What do you mean? Get out. We want to live as a family without you. It seemed they had decided to kick me out. Daniel had even prepared divorce papers. I've already filled out my part. Just sign it. This was the opportunity I had been waiting for. I immediately signed the divorce papers. Fine, get out. All right. I replied like that and began packing. Now this house will finally be ours. Let's celebrate by having some fancy steak. My in-laws were talking loudly, making sure I could hear their snide comments. I just packed my stuff without paying any attention. I'll just take the essentials for now. I'll have a moving company pick up the rest later. As I said this, my in-laws, grinning smugly, said, Make it quick, would you? It's funny how confident they looked. even though they were the ones at a loss. Or maybe they're just idiots. Oh well, I'll prepare something to bring them down a notch. Then I went back to my parents' house. Later, I went to our high-rise apartment with movers to get the rest of my big items.
So now this apartment is totally ours, huh?
Daniel said, wearing a disgusting smirk. I said, by the way, we haven't finished discussing the divorce. I then produced the evidence of Daniel's affair that I'd gotten from a private investigator. Daniel was at a loss for words, looking at the pictures of his affair. We'll have to settle some compensation for your affair before we divorce. Even his parents seemed shocked. They had no idea their son had been having an affair.
What? How? How did you find out about the affair?
You probably let your guard down because I've been home, not going out. Arm in arm in broad daylight? Really foolish. We'll discuss the rest through lawyers. When I said that, my in-laws chimed in.
Daniel, you don't have to listen to a woman like her anymore. But we have a trick up our sleeve. Yeah, we sure do.
What could their trick be? Then Daniel dropped a bombshell.
If I invest about $50,000 in margin trading, I could quickly turn it into $100,000.
That sounds like a dangerous gamble. I wanted to warn him, but I held back. Sometimes you have to learn the hard way. And this could be an expensive lesson for Daniel and his parents. I hope it works out for you. With that, I headed toward the front door to leave. Daniel and his parents followed me, taunting.
Now you won't be able to look down on me. I'll be the successful one.
I ignored them and went straight back to my parents' house. Later, I demanded compensation from Daniel through my lawyer. Since he was at fault, I also requested no division of assets. My lawyer said,
he seemed pretty confident and agreed to pay in one lump sum. He even said he was fine with no division of assets.
Did his margin trading plan actually work? Turns out, he hadn't done it yet. He planned to after he paid the compensation. Well, all the better for me. The compensation was paid in full and I invested it. Thanks to that, I made more money and saved even more. Eventually, I started living alone in a condo. I never cared for a high-rise apartment, so a regular condo was enough for me. Life went on, elegantly alone. Suddenly, I received a call from Daniel. I had forgotten to block his number, so I reluctantly answered. Hello?
Olivia, help me.
What happened?
I lost $50,000 in margin trading. Now it's not just about making money. I can't even pay off my debts.
Well, that's unfortunate.
How come you always win with such gambles?
Let me clarify. I wasn't gambling. I studied and calculated my investments. If you just throw money around like you're playing the lottery, of course you're not going to win.
I see. Olivia, please come back. If this continues, I'll have to cancel my $5,000 a month high-rise apartment.
Maybe you should. You couldn't afford it on your salary anyway.
But my mom and dad are still convinced it'll work next time. They're pushing for more margin trading.
Wow, you really should stop them. But it doesn't involve me anymore. Now, you need to take responsibility for taking care of Jessica and the others. Goodbye.
Wait.
With that, I hung up the phone. According to a mutual friend, it turns out my in-laws went ahead and engaged in another risky investment venture. They ended up failing miserably and taking on an additional $30,000 in debt. And of course, they had to cancel the luxury apartment. Luckily, the apartment was in Daniel's name, so I didn't have to deal with any of the fallout. My former in-laws are now drowning in debt, making repayments a real struggle. As for Daniel, he has to put all his income toward debt repayment, and it looks like his mistress dumped him because of it. In the end, Daniel had to pick up extra jobs and is working from dawn till dusk, pretty much returning to his sweatshop days. My former in-laws also have to work to pay off their debts. Honestly, I don't have an ounce of sympathy for them. They've brought all of this on themselves. Maybe now they've learned the hard way what investment really is. Although it'll probably be a long time before my ex and his family can accumulate enough money to invest again. Not that it matters to me. On my end, I've continued to prosper through my investments and have reached a point where I don't need to work anymore. From here on, I plan to enjoy my time, indulge in my hobbies, and earn a comfortable living on the side.